Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
I've never told anybody, but research has brought me here. And to be frank, I'm afraid of what might happen to me. Back in 2012, I was an active drug smuggler working near the Arizona-Mexico border. My job was meeting Mexican marijuana packers in the desert to pick up their load, then give them supplies for their trek back, etc. My buddy and I would use stolen quads that were provided to us to transport. Basically, we would go camp in the desert for a few days on a distinct hilltop, tall hill but not quite a mountain, waiting for the packers to arrive. It was pretty easy, and I liked to camp and smoke, so I loved it. January of last year was the last time I did that sort of work. My buddy and I were out on our hill glassing for border patrol and waiting for our packers. Business as usual. A couple hours after sunrise, my buddy spots somebody walking down the wash the packers usually use. I take a look and don't know what to make of it. It's not the border patrol, so I don't give a damn. But it's not our dudes either. It was a guy wearing what I'm assuming was a coyote skin, only because wolves are a lot less common around this part of Arizona, with long, straight black hair. He was pretty far out, so we couldn't make out much more than that. He ended up walking into a thicket of Palo Verde to rest. It was thick, so we could no longer keep tabs on him, but he wouldn't have been able to leave without us seeing him. At that point, we didn't need the binoculars, as we already knew where he was and the movement we could catch with the naked eye. The guy never left the Palo Verde. Right around noon, I caught sight of our packers coming up the wash. When they arrive at the Palo Verde, they freeze. The group, 8 packers, are staring at the thicket and making frantic arm motions. One of them drops his pack and cuts into it, removing a handful of pot as a quick offering. Pretty standard when these guys encounter Americans who aren't border patrol. When the guy doesn't take it, I guess they decide he is a threat and start running. That's when I noticed the brrr overhead. It's a border patrol bird, and it's close. Everyone was so distracted by the crazy guy in the tree that we got caught slipping. Those idiots need to hide, my buddy tells me. Finally, after running a good 100 yards from the Palo Verde, one of the other smugglers points in the air and they all hide in various trees and shrubs. At this point, the group is spread out about 30 yards between the first and last guy. I knew we were goners when the plane didn't go away after 5 minutes. These guys are screwed, and hopefully we don't get caught as well. Only hope is to stay put, and hope they didn't see us. They were about a half-mile south of us at this point. Another 15 minutes, and I can hear a helicopter in the distance, and dirt from vehicles coming in. The packers are screwed. As the helicopter comes in, circles the base of the hill 3/4 a mile to our west, where we stashed our quads. The quads! The chopper found them! We're doomed, dude! My buddy keeps freaking out. We always parked the quads at a different hill than what we were on for this specific reason. It just never happened before. The helicopter then goes towards the packers, and as it nears them, I notice a big-ass coyote or wolf running east overland. At this point, I think nothing of it. An hour later, all the packers except one are arrested, and our quads are gone. We are 13 miles from Highway 86. Oh well. At 5 p.m., my buddy whistles out towards where the bust happened, and I open and close our signal blanket. It's a 6 by 5 feet blanket with camo on one side and bright-ass neon pink on the other. The last packer gets up from his spot. Lazy guy was way behind the others. We meet up with the last packer and decide what we want to do. He is a Guatemalan named Eliseo. Doesn't know a lick of English. I know Spanish, but I don't like to watch Spanish TV. They talk too fast for me. Anyway, I asked him what was up with the asshole in the tree, and he said it was El Cadejo, and that we should leave before it comes back. What is this idiot talking about? I thought to myself, and the look on my buddy's face tells me he is thinking the same. Without quads, we have to hoof it, and the only light at the end of the tunnel is that the Guat had a half-pack of pot along with the food pack he was carrying for the group. It wasn't a total loss, and maybe that half-pack would keep me alive. We go back up our hill, gather our stuff, and start our hike towards the highway. I take out my burner phone and text, "Hey man, what's up with that girl from last night?" Which basically meant things were screwed, and I needed to be picked up at a predetermined mile marker at a predetermined time. As I turned the phone off and put it back in my pocket, I notice a human silhouette and drop behind a bush on instinct, and my two partners follow suit. It's the weird dude from before. Only now do I notice how big this dude is. He is 50 yards away and looks like a linebacker. I've never seen a Tohono O'odham this big before. He is facing us, but just standing there. My buddy is going on with his game over man, game over routine, and Eliseo and I are telling him to shut up. Eliseo looks at me and says we have to go now. He pulls a small wooden cross and places it on the ground between us and dude, and we book it. The quads made my work easy, so running sucks. But I've never run so hard in my life. Something about that dude was just weird and made me feel uneasy, like I wanted to puke from nervousness. We stop running after about 45 minutes. The sun is low, and everyone is tired and freaked out. We go into a thicket to rest and eat something. Nobody has eaten since this morning. I turn on the GPS, and we are 9 miles from our mile marker. Pickup time is 4 a.m., so we decide to rest for a few hours, then head out at midnight, assuming it will take us 3 hours to make the walk. Eliseo says a prayer, then draws a circle around us in the sand with crosses and symbols outside it. Anyway, it put everybody at ease, so my buddy and I sparked up and wrecked some tuna packets. I set the alarm on my watch, and we all went to sleep. I'm awoken in the middle of the night by a strange guttural howl bark. I've heard plenty of coyotes out there, and they can sound weird, but this was nothing like it. It had a weird bass to it that reverberated throughout your body. Eliseo noticed me wake up and put his finger to his lips and whispered, El Cadejo. It was 11:15. I kicked my buddy and made the same be quiet motion. The howling and barking grew louder over the 5 minutes, until a twig snapped close to us and Eliseo booked it. Not 4 steps away from our hole-up, a huge wolf wrecks him, hits him from his left side, knocking him down, and has a death grip on his throat before he hits the ground. The thing locked eyes with me, and that was it. We ran. I'm getting wrecked by cholla and mesquite and every horrible plant in the desert. The sound of Eliseo's blood gurgling from the new holes in his throat seemed like they are the only noise, even drowning out my own beating heart. That was also the last time I saw my buddy. I don't know what happened. I guess we ran different directions, but I never saw him again. I'm running on pure adrenaline at this point. Nothing is going to stop me from getting on the road and flagging somebody down. The desert returned to its eerie silence after about half an hour. I'm still jogging, but I can hear something is following me. It's not gaining, just keeping pace. I'm too afraid to turn around, and I'm choking back tears at this point. I decide to get out of the wash I've been following, and when I get out, I see a quick flash of light followed by a car door thud. It's a border patrol truck, one of the infrared camera-equipped ones they use out here. Help! I screamed towards the truck, and immediately a light flashed in my direction. I've never been so happy to see a border patrol agent. He's still about 100 yards away, but I don't give a F, it was still a relief. I start going full sprint, trip over a stump or something, IDK what it was. As I'm falling, I hear a snap of jaws behind my head and hot breath on my neck. Well, this is it, I thought. I hit the ground with this beast careening over me. He ends up rolling in front of me about 5 feet, and we both quickly stand back up. I'm not going to die without a fight, so I quickly drew my only weapon, a Case XX fixed blade my dad gave me when I turned 13. We got a regular Mexican standoff until the cracked 2 gunshots pierced the night. The wolf runs off, and I can make out the border patrol agent running towards me. He yells at me to put my hands up in Spanish. I comply, shivering now from adrenaline and nerves, telling him I'm a U.S. citizen. I told him that my buddy and I were camping when some Mexicans jumped us. Then that wolf that he scared away attacked the lot of us. He buys it, since he saw the wolf, and radios in to get me transported back to Ajo and to get me checked out by emergency services. I end up being taken home just after sunrise, and I sleep for the next 12 hours. The next day, the sheriff knocks at my door with a tracker that I recognize from photos at the local gas station. They use him whenever a mountain lion has been deemed a threat to a local village. He asks me if I would describe the events, if I would go with him to the campsite, etc. I told him screw that. I'm never going back out there. I ended up moving to El Paso to live with my cousin within 2 weeks. I'm so freaked out by the incident. That was a year ago. I have lived in El Paso ever since. Same line of work, different tactics here. Last week, as I was driving through a desolate part of northern El Paso, I saw the dude. Same fucking dude. My heart dropped, and I was instantaneously hit with a rush of adrenaline, like when a cop pulls you over after you have been drinking, or your girl catches you sleeping with her sister. I couldn't believe it, and when I turned around to look at him, there was a big-ass wolf walking away from the roadway. For the past few nights, I've heard those guttural howls and barks that have haunted me for the last year. It found me, and I don't know what to do. I'm afraid to tell any of my family because I don't want to bring this shit on them also. If I die, I die, but I want my story to be told.
No one is going to believe me, but here's the real reason behind the Georgia Guidestones. I know this because I work with a man who used to carve tombstones for a living. He learned the trade from his father, who, of course, did most of his tombstone work on granite in Elberton, Georgia, during the 50s to the 70s. That said, here's the explanation. Elberton, the city that the Guidestones are located in, claims that it is the granite capital of the world. Joe Fendley, the then president of Elberton Granite, is the key player in the story of the Guidestones. You see, Elberton Granite was quickly going out of business in the mid-70s and there was little he could do to avoid bankruptcy. So what was the solution? Drugs. You see, Fendley's business, Elberton Granite, shipped huge slabs of granite across the whole continental United States as a regular business practice. All Fendley would have to do is place large shipments of drugs, mostly marijuana and cocaine, inside the shipments, between the slabs of granite, and send them to their destination. There were no drug detection dogs at the time. They didn't become standard in police usage until the early 90s. So there was no way police could detect the cache of drugs hidden inside the extremely heavy slabs of granite as they were shipped. If they were even pulled over, that is, as no one would have the equipment to move the multiple-ton slabs off the trucks except for Elberton Granite. It's quite ingenious, really. So how does this tie in the Guidestones? Well, it turns out that shipping mass quantities of drugs yields large sums of cash, and that cash needs to be laundered in order to avoid the attention of the IRS. So what did Findley do? He got some pithy little actor, who was most likely in on it too, to pretend he was some guy named R.C. Christian, to buy a large plot of land on behalf of mysterious investors, and then R.C. Christian paid Elberton Granite, with the drug money, of course, for this big gigantic monument to be built, thus laundering the money. Basically, this just funneled Findley's illicit drug money right back into his company, Elberton Granite, and revitalized it from the brink of bankruptcy. Further, they chose this mumbo-jumbo New World Order shit just to further add to the mystery and throw people off. Really, folks, this is just proof of Occam's razor. The Georgia Guidestones aren't some sort of New World Order nonsense, but instead just a guy trying to launder his drug money. Seriously.
My mom crossed the border when she was around 6 or 7 years old. She and my gram plus some others were being escorted through the desert by a coyote. A smuggler. The mom. In the desert. It's starting to get dark. Finally cooling down. The coyote leads the group into a sort of shallow cave. Some old bottles and trash strewn around from past groups. Instructed to rest because they will start early tomorrow. Lay down next to Graham. Comfy dirt.jpg. Sudden wailing in the distance. Tense up. Graham whispers to her.
Keep quiet, go to sleep or she will come for you.
Shit. Graham thinks it's funny AF and laughs to herself a little. Wailing continues throughout the night, along with some incomprehensible words and treading noises. Eventually fall asleep. My gram passed about 3 years ago and still thought it was pretty funny. She never told Mom what it was.
The Bhutanese shadow market is legit. I think previous posts have tried to say it's like some kind of soul trading market or some LARP bull, but there's an actual black market that operates in Bhutan right across the Chinese border that's pretty wild. Basically, whenever the Chinese government cracks down on currency transfers, like they did a few years ago capping ATM withdrawals in Macau and Shanghai, every rich person in China needs to get renminbi out of the country so they can wash it on the outside. So they pay smugglers to literally carry it over land, strapped to the back of donkeys, and the easiest crossing is into Bhutan. For a while in the early 10s, the Chicoms used the military, Indian military, and even Western private military companies to patrol the border and intercept the convoys, but it was too dangerous. Because not only did you have heavily armed smugglers, but also bandits from all over the region descending into the region to make a quick buck. So what eventually happened was the Chinese would send treasury officials to Bhutan to meet the money at the border and try to arrest the guys going to pick it up. Then the currency sits behind in these big markets and the Chinese authorities go and buy it back. This is because despite having the highest foreign cash reserve in the world at 3 trillion, China has proportionally one of the smallest domestic cash reserves. So it's hugely problematic when people illegally take millions out of the country. So it's actually cheaper for them to take foreign currency, US dollars, and buy back their own currency from Bhutan's black market. Bhutanese organized crime has become filthy rich from this in the last decade. So the border markets have grown into these pirate havens where you can not only buy currency, but everything else that goes along with the smuggling trade that sustains it, like military equipment. So yeah, that's what the Bhutanese shadow market really is.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.